Was that actually a good first episode of a Star Trek series? That's the first time for everything. Hello, I'm Phil. Welcome to my channel where I talk about all the pop culture-y things I like, including Star Trek. And we have the most exciting new Star Trek series we've had probably ever, I think, is fair to say. Picard is here. It has arrived. Very excited. I'm going to be reviewing all of the episodes week by week on this channel, so if you want to stick around for more than that, then don't forget to hit that subscribe button thing and the bell if you want notifications. And join me on this journey through Season 1 of Picard. First bit of this review, I'm just going to give my overall thoughts, keep it spoiler free, then I'll let you know when I'm going to go into spoilers, and if you want to tune out then you can. So, Picard. This is a bold new direction for the franchise. We haven't had a series quite like this in the Star Trek canon before. We haven't had something that focuses so much on one person. We haven't had something that's not based on the crew of a starship or space station. It's brand new territory, really. And that's exciting. The world of Star Trek is big. The universe of Star Trek is big, and there's a wealth of possibilities, storytelling possibilities in there. And I'm glad that they're not just sticking to the, hey, this is a crew on a starship type formula anymore, because there's so much more they could explore. I've only seen this episode once, and I do know that from other things I reviewed, sometimes you notice extra things on the second time through that you might want to, mention, that you might have thought, oh, that would have been good to stick in the review. I didn't mention that. So this is very much my first reaction, and I've seen it once, but overall, wow, that was good. As I said in the intro, Star Trek has a ropey at best history with opening episodes. Pretty much every series has at best been mediocre in its first episode, and sometimes just appallingly bad. In fact, a lot of shows' very first whole seasons, in fact most of them, have been pretty bad too. They're not really shined until later on. This, however, I think bucks that trend absolutely. I really enjoyed this. Yeah, I honestly struggled to find any faults with it at all. I'm sure maybe on second or third watch I might find some, but anything I do find, and anything the couple of things that kind of I have written down in my notes are very much nitpicky. This was a good episode. The acting in this is just brilliant all around, but especially from Patrick Stewart playing Jean-Luc Picard again. This is he knows this character really well, and Patrick Stewart is an amazing actor. You can watch him in, I don't think I've seen him give a bad performance in anything he's been in. Even when he's in mediocre movies, he's pretty good in them. So I was kind of expecting this to be good in terms of his acting abilities, and he absolutely shines. There's some key scenes that I might talk about later that he really shines in, but overall, yeah, very good from him. And the rest of the supporting cast as well, all solid performances. There isn't a bad performance in the bunch in this. So overall, the acting is great. The cinematography is amazing. It's beautifully shot. The pace is spot on. It's exactly what it needs to be. It's not like any Star Trek series you've seen before, where they've had to do all the setup in the first episode and you've got to get through and establish the status quo. Here, it takes its time. Its pace is slower, it's more thoughtful, and the serialized nature of this, I think, is really going to pay off, much more than it did so in Discovery, which I like Discovery for the most part. It's had some weaker moments. Again, Season 1 had some very bad moments, but it's doing the sort of serialized narrative. Picard is doing the serialized narrative in a different way than Discovery is, and I think it's going to pay off, at least from this episode. It looks that way. It's got this unraveling mystery that we keep on finding out more bits to, and that's what's good. We get answers as well as more mystery. It's not just mystery on top of mystery. We get some mystery, some of it gets answered, which maybe leads to more mystery, but sometimes it doesn't. Sometimes we just get our answer, and I like that. I like the fact that we're really getting sort of a feel of a building storyline that is quite exciting. As you'd expect, the episode is packed full of Easter eggs as well, from just things in the background to mentions of various things from Star Trek lore in the past, and they're all lovely to see as well. So in terms of my overall feelings of this episode, I thought it was a really engaging watch. The characters were really well set up. Picard feels like he has developed. He doesn't feel like he's exactly where we left him at the end of Star Trek Nemesis. Feels like he's had more development, but that development feels natural. Given the background of what we're told he's gone through in this time since that movie, it absolutely makes sense that his character is where it is now. And it just feels right. It feels like Picard, but Picard 20 years later, and given all that, what he's been through, it feels natural that he's acting in the ways that he does. I would go as far as to say this is probably the best Star Trek has been since, the peak of Deep Space Nine, which is my favourite Star Trek show. Although this might challenge it, we'll see. So yeah, I really liked it, basically. Now let's move to discussing things in more depth. There's going to be spoilers in this part, so if you don't want the episode spoiled, go away, basically. But come back after you've watched it. I absolutely loved the opening scene, the music, which I believe was also the music that Data was singing in Star Trek Nemesis. There's a lot of really nice callbacks like that. That was a track playing. It was emotive. It really fit the scene really well. As we zoomed in on the Enterprise D, it was a lovely sweeping shot. The zoom, it was framed really nicely. And then we go into Picard and Data playing poker, which I thought was a really nice touch, given that sort of nicely mirrors the end of the TNG series where they're playing poker there. A lot more of them there, but it's a nice mirror. And we get this really nice interaction between Data and Picard that it's just lovely, and it's scripted well. And what I like throughout this scene, now a lot of people might pick up on the fact that Data's wearing the wrong uniform he's wearing his sort of Nemesis era uniform with a dark top, but it's on the Enterprise D, where they never had those uniforms on the Enterprise D. A lot of people might pick that up, and I've seen a few people pick that up as a negative. I don't think it's a negative at all. I think it's very deliberate, because as we find out, Picard is dreaming. This is a very sort of nightmare it ends up being. Who ends up waking in a sort of panic state. But it's a dream, and one thing dreams is they don't make sense. Things are illogical. Things are in the wrong place. You go through one door somewhere, and it leads to a completely different room than where it should do. Geography is all muddled up, and so I quite like that they've thrown in things, I think deliberately, to subtly hint at that when we don't know at the start if this is a dream or a flashback or what this is. So the uniform, the positioning of 10 forward, is that wrong? It might be, but I think all these things are deliberate, and the fact that Picard is older there, so he wouldn't have been on the Enterprise D. We're getting all these things that kind of clearly tell us that it is a dream early on, and add to that sort of disjointed feeling, which I think is really nice. I had a load of notes going, who is Daj? But then we found that out, so I guess we'll come back to that. I really like seeing a bit of Picard's life on the Vineyard as well, and what he's up to. The speaking French was lovely. That was nice. The fact that he's named his dog number 1, and his sort of Romulan refugee helpers, staff, whatever they are, they are there. That they seem to have a very sort of familial family relationship with him. They tease each other. They tease him. It seems like a really nice setup for him and his life there, and just getting a sense of where he's gone in those 20 years. Daj is an example of what I was talking about earlier when I said they set up mysteries, but then they solve them as well. They don't just leave us hanging with mystery upon mystery. They do solve some of them. So we get this mystery early on about who Daj is, and it's really compelling, and it drives the story forward. But then towards the end of the episode, we find out who Daj is. It's not something it's not a mystery, complete mystery that's going to linger on. But we then get new mysteries about her. And we still don't know everything about her. But the core mystery that's set up at the beginning, we find out a bit about. We find out that she is effectively as Data's daughter, as they refer to her. One thing I did wonder when Daj initially went to Picard, and that she had those flashes of him, the visions, was, is this some kind of Borg connection? He was Locutus, of course. Maybe she's an ex-Borg, and that's what the connection is. But we quickly found out that wasn't the case, and it's some kind of sort of more race memory type thing from her being effectively a descendant of Data. I really, really like the relationship that was established between Dahj and Picard, and I'm really interested to see what happens with her sister later on, and if her sister ends up having a very similar relationship with Picard or something a bit different. We don't know how similar they are. They are twin sisters, effectively, twin daughters of Data. How much do they share in terms of personality? How much do they, how much is the relationship between them and Picard going to be the same? Because that relationship is really, really strong, and I really like, there was some phenomenal acting here. One of my favourite scenes in it was the moment where they're sat down on a bench somewhere is it San Francisco, I think, and Picard is just reassuring Dahj about her place in the world. She's found out that she is a synth of some kind, and he's reassuring her. She says, "You're telling me I'm not real." He says, no, that's not what I'm saying. You are a real person. Your memories are your memories. They have value, even if they were manufactured. They are still your memories. And that was a lovely, touching scene between the two of them, superbly acted. And I think if we get more of stuff like that, and we get more of that kind of relationship between the two of them, I think it's going to be great. It really also shows Picard's character and how much he's come along since, the beginning of TNG. The very beginning of TNG, he was very stoic, very sort of formal, didn't sort of want to get too involved with people on a personal level. And you saw his character arc throughout the series develop, and as he loosened up a bit more and actually became friends with his commanding staff, to the point where he goes and plays that poker game with them at the end. And I think that journey, that character arc he's been on, is developed a bit more here, and over that 20 years or so since we last saw him, that's come on a bit more, and he's now he's always been kind, but it's outwardly showing that kindness and that gentleness that he maybe wouldn't have done back in Encounter at Farpoint. Going back on myself a bit, the interview scene where he's being interviewed by the journalist, I thought was a really good example of exposition well done, because a lot of the times there's stuff we need to find out as viewers that is often conveyed to us in very clunky ways. The writers know they need to get this information to us, it's the background, and it ends up being really clunky. But here, it was done really well, and that's a mixture of strong writing of the scene and also Patrick Stewart's performance of it. We managed to get all that, quite a lot of background information crammed into that interview that we needed as viewers to really understand where Picard was at that point in the story. And it didn't feel like we were being dumped on a load of information. It felt very natural. There was emotion in there as well. And I think, just some of his facial expressions really conveyed what he felt about stuff as well. So yeah, brilliant example of how to do exposition well on a show, because a lot of people just instantly cite exposition as bad, but it's not. You need exposition. You just have to do it well and convey it in a interesting, engaging way, and this did that. From a purely geeky, Easter eggy angle, another one of my favourite scenes was when he went into the archive, because there was just lots of, there was the Picard Day banner, there was models of the Stargazer, the Batlaf and stuff. There was just lots of stuff hanging around in there for us to spot. So that was a really nice scene as well, like that. I really hope we get to see Data again, because those two scenes that he was in, the two main scenes that he was in this one, were great. I've already mentioned the one at the beginning, but also the painting one. They were both really strong scenes, brilliantly written, some great character interactions there between the two of them. Brett Spiner putting in an amazing performance, and he looks better than he looked in the trailer. They've obviously done some extra VFX work since that first trailer when he looked a bit ropey, but he looks better now, so that's okay. And Data clearly plays an important part in the overall plot. Whether or not he's going to be physically there again, we don't know. There's obviously hints that one strand of his, positronic network can hold the entire personality of Data. So that's interesting. It kind of feels like very much a parallel between DNA. And if you look at the title sequence, there are strands of DNA in the visuals of the title sequence. So I think that might be a theme they're going down here. androids as sort of very much like a living life form and having their equivalent of a DNA. It kind of feels a little bit Battlestar Galactica-esque with their whole, Cylons, human-looking Cylons and, flesh and blood Cylons. We'll see where it goes. Just because one sci-fi show has done it and done it really well doesn't mean that no other sci-fi show can ever touch that concept again. I hope they do something interesting with it, and based on this first episode, I have full faith that they will. Like I said, I can't really think of any major negatives about this. It was everything I probably could have wished for out of this program. I have two things that feel really nitpicky, and like I said, one of them's about marketing, and it's just how much they revealed in the marketing and how much they could have held back, because they end the episode on this big dramatic reveal. We're at the Romulan reclamation yard place, reclamation station, whatever they call it, and that's where Daja's twin sister is. She works there. She's a scientist or something there. And then, actually, both of my negatives are about that one scene. So we get the pull out as they pulls out and pulls out and pulls out. Great visuals, absolutely great shot, and it reveals the Borg cube. Wow, what a reveal that would have been if it hadn't already been spoiled in all the marketing. That would have been a great, absolutely stunning cliffhanger if it hadn't been revealed in all the marketing, but it was, so we kind of already knew that. As they were pulling slowly out, it was like, yeah, it's a Borg cube. We know it's a Borg cube. We've seen the trailers. So that's not the episode's fault, that's the marketing team's fault. The other small, very nitpicky thing I've got is the Romulan that shows up in that scene, talking to Daja's sister. I've forgotten her name now. I'll try and remember it next week. It didn't feel very Romulan to me. Now, initially it jarred. He felt very human in the way he spoke, in the way he moved and everything, unlike any Romulan I've really ever seen before. And it jarred a little bit at the time. I'll see how it goes for the rest of the series. Like I say, it's a really small nitpicky thing anyway, but because the rest of the episode was absolutely fantastic, and this is such a small thing, he just didn't quite feel Romulan, and there might be a reason for that. It might not matter. Star Trek has this thing of very much portraying whole races as having the same personality traits. You know, they do it with the Vulcans, they do it with the Romulans, they do it with the Kardashians. They all kind of feel like the same people, vaguely. And it might be good to get away from that, actually. But it's still jarred. You know, it's a very, the way Star Trek has done races before is very to stereotype them, effectively. You know, Cardassians are like this, Romulans are like this. And I can see the merit in moving away from that, so that we have different kinds of personalities, like we do as humans. We as a human race don't have one type of personality, so it absolutely makes sense that Romulans would too. So it's absolutely not a really bad negative. It's just something that in the moment went, oh, he doesn't feel very Romulan. That's strange. We'll see. Might not bother me at all by the end. Might not bother me at all by next episode. Who knows? Now, I'm also very curious to see what the people that complain about the politics in Discovery think about this episode. Like I say, I enjoy some of Discovery. A lot of Discovery. Second season, again, had its flaws, but was pretty strong. First season, especially the first half, was very weak. But one thing I never got was the argument that they're being too political. Star Trek is political. It absolutely should be political. So I'm interested to see what the people make of it here, because this episode was very political. There was stuff about refugees, and there was, what was it, the sort of isolationist attitudes of the Federation after the the attack on Mars. And it's making some political points, if you will, But it kind of feels like it's doing it in a different way to Discovery. Now, I didn't mind the way Discovery did it, but this is different, and I'm interested to see if people perceive that as a difference. If you're somebody who minded the politics in Discovery, do you mind the politics here? It's no less overt, in my view, but what do you think? Do you think it's definitely different? It's portrayed different. It's not portrayed differently. It's, I don't know. It feels woven into the storyline very much so, and maybe because it's not on an episodic basis, and the whole story is structured around it. Maybe that's what the difference is. I don't know. I haven't really fully formed my full thoughts on it, but I'm interested to see what other people think. On that point, though, another really strong scene that I've talked about already is the reporter scene, and in that, the reporter says something along the lines of Romulan lives. Was it really worth it to save these Romulan lives? And she emphasizes the Romulan, and he goes, no, lives. Because life is life, and it shouldn't matter, what race people come from in order to save them. It's a very on-the-nose political point. And it works really well in this scene, and it's absolutely true to Picard's character. This is exactly what he would have said during the era of TNG if something similar had come up. So that was a really strong moment as well. There we go. I think I've covered everything from my notes. Oh, the only other thing I wrote down was Maddox, who was a character in TNG who wanted to dissect data at one point, and Picard took him to court and challenged him in Federation court to stop him doing it, or he challenged them in court in order to be able to do it one way or the other. I can't remember which way around it was. But he is mentioned in this. He used to run the Daystrom Institute cybernetics department that is now much, much smaller, but still in a massive room. I'm not sure about that. That's a bit weird. A bit of waste of space, If you reduce the department, surely you could give them a tiny little room to sit in instead of the massive lab with loads of empty desks. But yeah, I'm hoping he comes into it as an actual character. The actor's still alive, I think. He's still around. I know he'd probably slightly younger than Picard. So, yeah, he could come back into it. And I think it's very strongly hinted that he's probably Daja's and her sister's father figure that they talk about when they talk about their father. It's probably Maddox. So it'll be interesting to see if he pops up in the show and if he's played by the same actor. Hopefully he is. Anyway, that's my thoughts on the first episode of Star Trek Picard. What did you think? Let me know in the comments below. And I'll be back for more reviews next week when I review episode 2. See you then. Bye.